I had just moved into my new house, a quiet little place on the outskirts of town. It was peaceful, perfect for someone like me who enjoyed solitude. At night, everything was still, almost eerily so, but I liked it. That is, until the knocking started. The first night it happened, I was half asleep. It was 3:33 a.m. when I heard 3 sharp knocks on my front door. Startled awake, I lay there for a moment, heart pounding. Who would be knocking at my door in the middle of the night? I told myself it was nothing, just my imagination or perhaps an animal, but the sound was so distinct. I hesitated for a moment before cautiously getting up to check. I looked through the peephole. Nothing. No one was there. I shook it off and went back to bed. But sleep didn't come easily. The next night it happened again. 3 loud knocks at exactly 3:33 a.m. This time, I was fully awake and bolted out of bed, heart racing. I ran to the door, yanked it open. Again, no one. The street was empty, the air still. I stood there for a long time, listening to the silence, feeling the chill of the night. The same thing happened night after night. I couldn't figure it out. My security camera showed nothing. No motion, no visitors, just those 3 knocks, like clockwork. Each night the knocking became more insistent, almost aggressive, as if something was demanding to be let in. I started dreading the nights, staying up late, waiting for it to happen again. Then one night, after weeks of this nightly terror, it just stopped. I lay awake, waiting for those familiar knocks, but the house stayed silent. The clock hit 3:33 a.m. Nothing. I should have been relieved, but instead I was filled with unease. It hasn't happened since, but now I wake up every night at 3:33 a.m., my heart pounding, bracing for those knocks that never come. But I know they will. Someday they will. I used to sleepwalk when I was a kid. We lived in a rough neighborhood, Decatur, Georgia, and I'd wake up outside in the middle of the night, not knowing how I got there. I'd have to walk home and then face the dark, wide-open door I had left behind, just hoping nobody had wandered in while I was gone. That was creepy enough, but the time that scared me the most was when I was about 9 years old. One night, I woke up to find myself standing at the window, with the curtains drawn back. I had no idea how I got there, but as I started to come to, I noticed something strange. Right outside the window was a very large man. He had no hair, none at all, not even eyebrows. He was just standing there, staring at me, looking as confused as I felt. And as I watched, he started inching closer to the window, his face coming right up to mine, like he was trying to figure out what he was seeing. That's when it hit me. This was real. I wasn't dreaming. I froze, panic taking over. And then I just started screaming. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. I just screamed. I was so scared, I peed myself right there. The man freaked out too. He screamed, this high-pitched squeal that didn't match his size at all. Then he did some weird tumble backward and took off running down the street, zigzagging like he was trying to dodge bullets or something. It was the strangest thing I've ever seen. My mom came running in, but by then it was all over. She thought I had a nightmare, and I couldn't really explain what had happened. The next morning, though, we found a screwdriver on the porch and damage to the door handle and door jamb, like someone had been trying to break in. The following is a story that took place quite a few years back now. However, it still baffles me completely, and I'd like to share it here. I'm a teenager, and I've been in scouting, Boy Scouts, for nearly all my life, and I really enjoy exploring with my friends and being trusted more as I'm older now. A few years ago, me and 2 girls named Amy and Harriet were asked to head into the woods surrounding our campsite to find a long, straight stick suitable for carving into a point. Bear in mind that I was a lot younger back then. Harriet was older, and Amy only 1 year older than myself. We had been walking in deliberately the same direction as to not get lost, and memorizing the surroundings as we went, in order to find our way back easily. About 15 minutes in, we couldn't find anything to take back, so we turned around to return to the campsite. That's the initial panic set it. The trees had almost unnaturally knitted themselves together in such a way that it seemed our path was non-existent in the first place. like it had just vanished. We looked around 360 degrees, and now everything looked exactly the same. Trees we could have sworn were different from one another appeared as all copies of the same tree. We kept walking in what we thought to be the correct direction, while shouting out for help, and eventually came to a concrete path, almost like a road, but very thin, separating the forest, splitting it into two. We didn't follow the road as it went in the wrong direction to our campsite. On the other side of the path was more forest. However, nearby was an abandoned shack, likely used for storage or whatever else. We had no idea anything like this was out here in these woods, so we just kept walking. We eventually came to a road we didn't recognize. A woman wearing a pink and purple regatta outdoors coat walked past, and we frantically asked her for the direction of our campsite, as by now, according to our watches and Harriet's phone, we'd been walking for an hour and a half. She said she'd never seen us before, but she said there's another campsite in that direction. We followed her advice and eventually came back to our campsite. We frantically apologized for being so long and that we couldn't find anything. The leader, Ian, could see all three of us were shaken up, and he stated confused that we'd only been gone 25 minutes and that our free time was still going on. To this day, this baffles all three of us, as our free time was 40 minutes long, and our watches and phones had said we'd been gone for hours. The forest we were lost in felt crushing and claustrophobic, like that we'd entered an area that the concept of time didn't apply to. I believe in the paranormal. However, this was so unlike anything I've heard or experienced before. It literally was like we'd been in a time vortex or something, and that hours in the forest were only minutes in the rest of the world. The feeling was very strange, and it stuck with me for the rest of the camp. I was about 4 or 5 years old, and my parents had just separated. My mom was living in a 2-bedroom apartment. I had my own room, but I liked sleeping in her bed whenever I was staying with her. Our 2 bedrooms were at the end of a hallway, directly across from each other. Our apartment was on the first floor, and I remember that it was in the middle of the summer, and my mom had a window open in her room that was directly behind the bed, above the headboard. Anyways, I woke up in the middle of the night and remember sitting up and seeing that our cat was sitting in the doorframe of my mom's room. Her door was open, and you could partially see into my bedroom. It was strange because our cat was a huge snuggler and was typically always in bed with us. As I was watching him, he walked into my bedroom and meowed. I turned to face my mom and wake her up. In the 3-4 seconds it took her to wake up and ask me what was wrong, we both looked back up in the doorframe, and there was a man standing by my open door, making his way out of my bedroom. I still don't know how she managed to do it so quickly, but my mother proceeded to pick me up and literally throw me out of the screen window. Again, we were on the first floor, and it was maybe a 3-foot drop to the ground. She quickly followed, and we were able to start screaming for help. The police came, but didn't see any signs of forced entry, only that our front door was unlocked, which led them to believe the man must have exited that way. But the strange thing was that my mom swore up and down that she had locked the door that night, with the deadbolt and chain lock. About a week later, she was cleaning the kitchen and opened up our water heater closet and found a notebook with names and drawings, as well as a pair of gloves and some gum wrappers. The man had been in our house and hid until we were asleep. We never knew why he was there or what his intentions were, but I have a feeling they weren't good. One thing is clear: we immediately moved from that place. I don't believe in the supernatural. Never have, never will. But everything that's happened over the last few days has me questioning everything I thought I knew. I haven't slept, I haven't eaten, and I haven't left my house. But deep down, I know it doesn't matter. I know she'll get me anyway. Let me start at the beginning. It was 3 days ago. I was driving home from a friend's party. I'd stayed late, and it was already dark. The roads were empty, the streetlights casting long, eerie shadows across the pavement. And that's when something caught my eye. There it was, an old Victorian house, its windows glowing faintly in the night. But it wasn't the house itself that unnerved me. It was what I saw in one of the windows. The 3rd floor, a shape. The shape of a woman, hanging upside down. At first, I thought I was seeing things. She wasn't just hanging there. Her feet were somehow attached to the ceiling, her body dangling in midair. Her arms hung unnaturally at her sides, as if gravity had no hold on them. But her hair, it hung straight down, swaying in delicate wisps, the only thing obeying the laws of physics. It was just a silhouette, no details, no face, but the sight chilled me to my core. I blinked, and I had already passed the house. My mind raced, refusing to accept what I'd seen. I turned around, drove past the house again. This time, there was nothing but rumpled curtains and a lamp. Maybe, just maybe, if you squinted really hard, you could mistake it for a woman hanging upside down. Maybe. I shook my head and kept driving, trying to rationalize what I'd seen. I've had moments like this before. It's called pareidolia, when your brain sees familiar shapes or patterns in random things, like faces in clouds or figures in shadows. I've always had an overactive imagination, so I dismissed it as another pareidolia jump scare. But then I saw her again. The next morning, I was on the subway heading to work. I was staring out the window, zoning out as the city blurred past. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw something. Another subway car passing by in the opposite direction. And there she was, the woman, hanging upside down in the window of the passing train. It was only for a split second, but my heart skipped a beat. She was there, pressed against the glass, her body suspended in that same eerie way. I only saw her for a moment, but it was enough to send a cold shiver down my spine. No, I had to be imagining things. A trick of the light, maybe a jacket, or something else draped in a way that looked like her. My heart raced as I tried to steady my breathing, but the image was burned into my mind. The rest of the commute, I kept my eyes down. I couldn't bear to look out the windows anymore. When I finally got to work, my legs felt like jelly, but I forced myself through the day. I didn't tell anyone. What would I say? Hey, I keep seeing a woman hanging upside down. They'd think I was losing it. That night, I went home and tried to distract myself. I binged some mindless TV, stuffed my face with chips, anything to take my mind off her. Eventually, exhaustion took over, and I went to bed. But at 3:03 a.m., I jolted awake. Cold sweat clung to my skin, and my heart was pounding in my chest. I didn't remember any dreams, but there was a sense of dread hanging over me. I tried to shake it off, pulling the covers up to my chin. But then I noticed something. Something in the darkness of my room didn't look right. The shadows seemed too thick, too heavy. I forced myself to look around. Everything was where it should be, my nightstand, my bookshelves. But the light, it was too dark in here. That annoying glow from the street lamp outside wasn't shining through the curtains like it usually did. Cautiously, I got out of bed and walked to the window. My fingers trembled as I pulled back the curtains. She was there, hanging from the awning right outside my window, swaying gently in the breeze. Her hair dangled like a curtain of darkness, her arms limp, her body suspended in that same unnatural position. I stumbled backward, yanking the curtains shut. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My mind raced. This couldn't be happening. I must have imagined it. I had to be dreaming. I peeked through the curtains again. Nothing. The street lamp was shining brightly, the stars twinkling in the clear night sky. She was gone. The next day, I tried to convince myself it had all been a dream, a vivid, terrifying dream. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. Something was wrong. Terribly, terribly wrong. I spent hours searching online, desperate for answers. That's when I found a forum discussing urban legends and strange sightings. Someone had seen her, the upside-down woman, and they died 4 days later.